Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a truly fascinating journey inside what is, without a doubt, the most complex and remarkable machine on the entire planet, the human body. We're going to completely demystify the science of kinesiology, break down the actual ground-level facts of holistic health, and try to cut through the massive amount of noise out there surrounding nutrition. So get ready, because we are going to look at everything from how your muscles physically generate force to the exact fuel they need, and even how our modern society is, well, fundamentally clashing with our basic biology.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the mechanics, I want you to imagine this. Let's say your best friend is literally an Olympic athlete at the absolute peak of human physical performance, but they're suffering from clinical depression. Would you actually consider them healthy? For decades, we've basically been told that being healthy just means you can run a really fast mile or crank out a bunch of push-ups. But this scenario completely shatters that myth, right? Physical fitness, which is just the ability of your body to work efficiently, is really just one single piece of a much larger puzzle.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, rethinking health and wellness. Number 2, the mechanics of movement. Number 3, fueling the human machine. Number 4, navigating modern health challenges. And finally, number 5, science, media, and misinformation. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, rethinking health and wellness.
Okay, let's dive right into this. According to the World Health Organization, health isn't just the absence of disease, it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. True wellness is actually incredibly multifaceted. In fact, it encompasses 9 distinct dimensions. We've got physical wellness, sure, we all know that one. But look at the rest of this list. There's occupational wellness, which means finding actual fulfillment in your work. Emotional wellness, which is your ability to cope with life and express your feelings appropriately. Financial wellness, handling your resources wisely. And then you also have cultural, environmental, intellectual, social, and spiritual wellness. True health is really about finding a delicate, highly intentional balance across all 9 of these diverse dimensions.
However, if we do zoom in and look specifically at that physical dimension today, well, the statistics are honestly pretty alarming. Right now, less than 25% of young adults are actually physically ready for military basic training. Think about that. Throughout human history, physical fitness was absolutely essential for survival, right? You needed it for hunting, farming, defending a community. But in just the last few decades, computers and robotics have drastically reduced our everyday need to move. So this sharp decline in physical wellness we're seeing, it's a massive, entirely modern anomaly.
That brings us to Section 2, the mechanics of movement.
Kinesiology, which is the scientific study of human movement, actually has some super fascinating roots. It's like a giant puzzle that took centuries to put together. Way back in 384 BC, Aristotle essentially became the father of kinesiology when he described how walking converts rotary movement into forward motion. Jump ahead to the 1400s, and you've got Leonardo da Vinci secretly dissecting bodies from graveyards just to map out and label muscles and tendons. Then, by the 1600s, Sir Isaac Newton's laws of motion gave us the actual math to understand force and acceleration. And that military connection we just mentioned, that's been around for a century. During World War I, the US government realized 1 in 3 recruits were unfit for service, and that actually sparked a massive nationwide push for physical education. Today, though, our understanding of movement is way more cellular. When we move, our bodies rely on 2 primary energy pathways. First up is anaerobic exercise. This pathway produces short, powerful bursts of movement. Think sprinting or heavy lifting. It maxes out at around 12 seconds. And crucially, it operates without oxygen. Now, actually scratch that. It doesn't mean you stop breathing. It simply means the chemical reaction that's converting glucose to energy inside your muscles is happening without oxygen molecules. Conversely, aerobic exercise, like a brisk 10-minute walk or running a marathon, uses a slower, incredibly efficient pathway that absolutely requires oxygen to fuel your long-term endurance. And understanding this physical makeup helps bust one of the most persistent, frustrating fitness myths out there, the idea that muscle weighs more than fat. Look, a pound is a pound. 1 pound of feathers weighs the same as 1 pound of bricks. But muscle is simply more dense. It packs tightly and takes up less volume than fat. This is exactly why you might hit the gym for a month, feel absolutely amazing, but step on the bathroom scale and see literally no change. Your body composition is vastly improving, taking up less space, even if your total weight remains exactly the same.
All right, let's talk about what powers all this. Section 3, fueling the human machine.
So based on the dietary guidelines for Americans, we need 3 macronutrients in large portions every single day. Protein, which is for muscle and bone repair, makes up about 10 to 35% of your daily calories. Fat, which is totally vital for organ padding, regulating your temperature, and making hormones, makes up 20 to 35%. But notice that largest slice right there, carbohydrates, sitting at 45 to 65%. Carbohydrates are our body's primary preferred short-term energy source. So despite what some fad diets say, carbs are absolutely not the enemy.
That being said, we definitely need to distinguish between the types of carbohydrates we're eating. Simple carbohydrates, things like honey, the lactose in milk, or high fructose corn syrup, are digested incredibly fast. They give you a quick energy, but they spike your blood sugar. On the flip side, complex carbohydrates have these long chains of sugar molecules that take your body much longer to break down and digest. We're talking about whole grains, lentils, and vegetables. Remember, even apples and broccoli are carbohydrates. Complex carbs are what keep you feeling full longer and provide that nice, steady, sustained fuel.
So you might be wondering, where does all this fuel actually go? Well, it mostly goes straight to your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR. This is literally the amount of calories your body uses simply at rest. The vast majority of the calories you consume every single day aren't burned during a sweaty spin class or a heavy lifting session. They are burned simply keeping the lights on. They keep your human machine warm and keep your organs functioning and alive while you're just sitting on the couch.
Unfortunately, our relationship with this fuel can sometimes become deeply unhealthy. It is really important to understand psychiatric illnesses related to eating, because extreme diets can become dangerous very quickly. Anorexia nervosa involves an excessive preoccupation with weight, which leads to severe food restriction, malnourishment, and in extreme cases, even organ failure. Bulimia, conversely, involves cycles of binging and purging. And what makes bulimia particularly difficult to diagnose visually is that individuals struggling with it often maintain a totally normal body weight, despite the extreme physical and psychological toll it's taking on them.
Which brings us to Section 4, Navigating Modern Health Challenges. $173 billion. Let that massive number sink in for a second. That is the annual healthcare cost of obesity in the United States alone. With almost 50% of adults in the U.S. currently classified as overweight or obese, we are basically seeing the direct result of a major societal shift. We have moved towards sedentary, computer-driven jobs, and combined that with the rise of highly processed, easily available fast food. Like we said earlier, our biology expects us to move, but our modern environment basically pays us to sit.
And you know, this sedentary shift is really just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Today's kinesiologists have to scientifically navigate some deeply complex societal challenges. This includes studying socioeconomic barriers, looking at how lower-income individuals often lack access to healthy food or safe fitness facilities. It includes examining racial divides in sports, like the historical underrepresentation of black quarterbacks in the NFL. It involves engineering incredible new adaptive sports technologies so that the 26% of Americans living with disabilities and participate fully. And it involves navigating the evolving, highly complex rules surrounding the inclusion of transgender athletes in competitive sports. All of these are significant sociological issues that require really thoughtful research-based solutions.
All right, moving into our final stretch. Section 5, Science, Media, and Misinformation.
To figure all this stuff out, kinesiology relies on two main analytical tools to discover the truth. First is qualitative research. This gathers non-numerical data. It looks at subjective feelings, human experiences, and opinions. It's the why and how. Quantitative research, on the other hand, gathers hard numerical data to test mathematical relationships between variables, like measuring someone's exact heart rate variability or their muscle mass density. Both of these tools are absolutely vital for understanding the whole picture of the human machine. But here is exactly where things tend to go wrong for the general public. Most scientific research is highly complex. When the news media gets hold of a study, they often cherry-pick the data to create these wild, sensationalized headlines. Take a claim like this: eating salmon doubles your risk of a stroke. Okay, that sounds terrifying, right? But they completely stripped away the vital context. The participants in that study ate salmon 3 times a day for 2 months straight, and the actual mathematical risk merely went from a tiny 1 in 100,000 to 2 in 100,000. So yes, technically the risk doubled, but the real-world danger was vastly overblown just to get your clicks. Media distortion is one problem, for sure, but scientific funding is a whole other issue. Let me pose this direct question to you. If a published study suddenly declares that drinking soda is perfectly healthy, but then you find out the research was entirely funded by a soda company, would you actually trust those results? Always check the funding sources. Hidden conflicts of interest in scientific literature can entirely warp the public's understanding of what is actually healthy.
So the crucial point is this: we absolutely cannot base our incredibly complex, highly individual biological needs on unverified, one-size-fits-all advice. Social media allows literally anyone to post anything without a fact checker.
But just because a specific workout routine or a crazy fad diet seems to work perfectly for that attractive, shirtless guy on your feed does not mean it is scientifically sound or even safe for your specific body, your genetics, and your personal goals.
And even formal, peer-reviewed science isn't absolute dogma. It's a constantly evolving process. Right now, the scientific community is actually facing what's known as the replication crisis. This is a major hurdle where modern researchers are trying to reproduce previous scientific findings, and they're failing to get the same results. This indicates that some published truths might have just been statistical flukes all along. Furthermore, scientific journals rarely publish null findings, which are studies that show an experiment had no effect, meaning we miss out on a lot of really important data. Science changes as our tools, like high-definition cameras and force plates, continue to improve.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The human machine is resilient, it's highly adaptable, and it is incredibly complex. True wellness requires balancing all the dimensions of your life, understanding the actual mechanics of your movement, properly fueling your body, and critically filtering out all that media noise. So I leave you with this question. Now that you better understand the mechanics and the fuel of your own body, how will your daily actions today shape your health and mobility far into the future? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep learning.